Imagine a single meal weighing 500 kilograms. That is 1,100 pounds of raw meat, solid bone, and thick armor, swallowed entirely whole in one sitting. You're looking at the exact feeding requirement of an apex predator that makes the modern green anaconda look like an earthworm. Titanoboa cerrejonensis, 42 to 50 feet of pure muscle, weighing over 2,500 pounds and as thick as a steel oil drum. Now, when a snake of that massive size gets hungry, the entire ecosystem goes on high alert. But what exactly do you feed a monster of this scale? You might think it ate dinosaurs. It didn't. Titanoboa ruled the Earth exactly 60 million years ago, a mere 5 million years after the asteroid wiped out the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The dinosaurs were completely gone. So what was on the menu? Well, let's take a look at the heavyweights first. Enter Carbonemys cofrenii. This prehistoric side-necked turtle wielded a shell nearly 6 feet across. It possessed the exact physical footprint of a modern Volkswagen Beetle. Built from dense bone and thick keratin, its skull was the size of an NFL football, carrying a razor-sharp beak powered by jaw muscles capable of snapping a crocodile's femur in half. To any mammalian predator, attacking Carbonemys is a guaranteed death sentence. But Titanoboa was an ambush predator engineered to bypass armor entirely. Taking down a car-sized turtle requires a hyper-specialized biomechanical sequence. When a 2,500-pound snake strikes, it hits with explosive kinetic energy. Accelerating its skull at over 10 feet per second, the blunt force impact carries the kinetic energy of a falling piano. We believe Titanoboa slammed its jaws over the turtle's head, instantly neutralizing the beak. Then, the coils engaged. Now, for decades, science believed constrictors killed by suffocation, squeezing the air out of the lungs. That is scientifically false. Constriction is a targeted attack on the cardiovascular system. When Titanoboa wrapped 50 feet of dense muscle around the turtle's carapace, it squeezed the vascular network. The external pressure applied to the body cavity instantly overwhelmed the heart's ability to pump. Blood pressure spiked artificially, then immediately crashed to zero. This condition is called ischemia. Oxygenated blood physically stopped reaching the turtle's brain. Within 60 seconds, the prehistoric turtle blacked out. Within minutes, its heart stopped entirely. No shattered shell, no bloody struggle. Titanoboa executed a silent, engineered shutdown of the circulatory system. Now, swallowing a 6-foot-wide rigid disc of solid bone is a mathematical nightmare. Snake jaws do not actually dislocate. Their lower jaw is split into 2 separate halves, connected at the chin by a highly flexible elastic ligament. This separation allows the left and right side to operate independently. The back of the jaw connects to a mobile bone called the quadrate, acting as a double-hinged lever. When Titanoboa approached the lifeless Carbonemys, it unfolded its head, executing a process known as the pterygoid walk. The left side of the jaw hooks itself into the shell, pulls forward, and anchors. Then the right side hooks, pulls, and anchors. Slowly, millimeter by millimeter, Titanoboa stretched its skin and muscles over the shell. The snake mechanically ratcheted its body over the prey, like pulling a tight sock over a massive foot. The skin between its scales would have stretched to absolute failure limits, exposing raw connective tissue. Swallowing a meal this massive takes hours. The turtle completely blocked the snake's throat, sealing off the airway. To survive ingestion, Titanoboa utilized an extendable trachea. This muscular breathing tube pushed out of the bottom of its mouth, extending past the turtle's shell. It acted like a freediver's snorkel. Titanoboa breathed continuously while its throat was stretched to the breaking point. Once the turtle passed its jaws, biological warfare truly began. Titanoboa's stomach was an industrial acid vat. Human stomach acid sits at a pH of roughly 1.5. Titanoboa's stomach acid dropped to a pH of nearly 1.0. This industrial-grade hydrochloric acid, mixed with highly potent digestive enzymes, actively dissolves solid calcium carbonate. Now, dissolving a 6-foot bone dome requires a physiological metamorphosis. Within 48 hours of swallowing the turtle, Titanoboa's internal organs rapidly expanded. Its heart increased in mass by up to 40% to pump the massive volume of blood required by the digestive tract. Its liver and intestines doubled in size to handle the impending flood of toxic byproducts and fat. Its metabolic rate spiked to 40 times its normal resting rate. The acid physically ate through the turtle's keratin scutes and systematically dissolved the underlying skeletal dome. Within 2 weeks, it was completely liquefied into calcium sludge. But turtles were just the appetizer. Titanoboa shared its muddy rivers with aggressive, heavily armored apex predators, the Dirosaurids. Enter Cerrejonensis impresarius and Acherontosuchus guajiraensis. These prehistoric crocodilians were 20-foot killing machines armed with thick, bony osteoderms embedded in their skin. Their jaws were designed exclusively for ripping flesh. They survived the exact same asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. When a 2,500-pound snake targets a 20-foot crocodile, a frontal assault is absolute suicide. A large Dirosaur's bite force could likely tear a snake in half. Titanoboa weaponized stealth. We think its dark scales made it practically invisible in the tannin-stained rivers. The snake lay motionless on the riverbed, entirely submerged, holding its breath for up to an hour. When a Dirosaur swam overhead, the water erupted. Titanoboa slammed its heavy skull straight into the crocodile's underbelly. Before the crocodile could register the trauma, the snake was wrapping its first coil. A crocodile's primary defense instinct is the death roll, spinning violently to tear chunks of meat from the attacker. But a death roll requires momentum. You cannot gain momentum when a 50-foot tube of solid muscle ties itself in knots around your entire body. Titanoboa tied the Dirosaur down with localized, overwhelming weight. Now, modern anacondas exert roughly 90 psi of constriction pressure. Titanoboa generated over 400. That is the physical equivalent of having the weight of the Brooklyn Bridge suspended directly on your chest. The snake locked the crocodile's jaws shut. It pinned its powerful tail, and 400 psi of constriction force crushed the crocodile's lungs and arrested its heart. Even with its thick dermal scutes, the Dirosaur was completely helpless. The crushing pressure triggered a massive drop in blood pressure. The crocodile blacked out, the heart stopped beating, the 20-foot apex predator was dead in under 2 minutes. Swallowing a crocodile presents a unique mechanical hazard. A crocodile is incredibly long and covered in jagged, bony scutes. If swallowed tail first, the scutes act like fishhooks, catching on the esophagus and tearing the predator open from the inside out. Titanoboa would have swallowed prey headfirst. The snake located the snout, walked its independent lower jaws over the head, and began forcing 20 feet of armor down its throat. The snake's ribcage lacked a sternum. Every single rib flexed outward independently. As the massive crocodile slid down, Titanoboa's body expanded to literally 3 times its normal diameter. The snake became a living sleeping bag, encasing a 20-foot monster. You might assume that crushing turtles and suffocating crocodiles was Titanoboa's everyday routine, and for a long time, science thought the exact same thing. It was the ultimate reptilian heavyweight champion, capable of dominating the rivers through sheer brute force. But while it could absolutely obliterate heavy armor when it needed to, in 2013, paleontological evidence added a massive twist to the daily dietary profile of this monster. When paleontologists finally analyzed the shattered skull fragments of Titanoboa, they realized these epic battles weren't its primary everyday habit. Snake skulls are notoriously fragile, built from thin, delicate bones that rarely fossilize. But the rare pieces found in the Cerrejon coal mine revealed a startling anatomical secret. Modern heavy constrictors have short, robust, heavily reinforced skulls designed to withstand the extreme mechanical stress of wrestling heavy mammals and giant reptiles. Their teeth are thick and heavily rooted. Titanoboa's skull was distinctively different. The maxilla and the palatine bones were loaded with unusually high numbers of teeth. These teeth were extremely thin, needle-like, and sharply recurved. Furthermore, its jaw joint was positioned unusually far back, giving the snake an absurdly wide gape. The exact positioning of the teeth and the shape of the quadrite bone strongly resemble modern homolopsids, or water snakes. These are not the anatomical traits of a dedicated reptile killer. These are the exact biological markers of a highly specialized piscivore. Titanoboa was a fish eater. The 2,500-pound monster, capable of snapping a crocodile in half, sustained its massive bulk primarily by eating fish. Now this might sound like a bit of a downgrade. It isn't. The fish of the Paleocene epoch were absolute aquatic nightmares. We're talking about massive prehistoric lungfish and giant osteoglossomorphs, the ancient ancestors of the modern arapaima. These fish were heavy-bodied torpedoes of pure muscle. A giant lungfish could reach over 10 feet in length and weigh hundreds of pounds. Their bodies were heavily armored with thick, interlocking bony scales, acting exactly like medieval chainmail. Their jaws were lined with heavy, crushing tooth plates capable of pulverizing solid bone. Now, catching a 10-foot armor-plated fish in zero-visibility water requires a level of speed and precision that seems impossible for a 50-foot snake. Striking underwater is physically demanding, because water is nearly 800 times denser than the air. Drag forces fight every single inch of forward acceleration. To overcome this massive physical barrier, Titanoboa likely utilized lateral strikes, hunting exactly like a massive moray eel. The snake lay perfectly motionless on the riverbed. When a giant lungfish swam past, the strike was horizontal and completely instantaneous. Moving sideways minimizes water resistance. The higher number of recurved needle-like teeth were specifically designed to penetrate thick slime and interlock immediately with hard scales. The sheer volume of the snake's open mouth created a sudden, violent vacuum underwater. It literally sucked the massive fish directly into the trap. Once those backward-facing teeth sank into the fish's scales, escape was physically impossible. The fish would thrash wildly, whipping its 10-foot body, but the inward-facing teeth only dug deeper the harder it fought. Because, if you didn't know, fish don't have limbs or claws to fight back, Titanoboa did not even have to use its full 400 psi of constriction force. It simply pinned the massive fish against the muddy riverbed, walked its jaws over the gills, and swallowed the beast alive. Eating a 10-foot fish provides a distinct biological advantage. It is significantly easier on a snake's highly taxed digestive system than processing a car-sized turtle. Fish bones are structurally lighter. They break down much faster under stomach acid. This specialized dietary preference allowed Titanoboa to feed much more frequently. It would have seamlessly maintained its massive 2,500-pound bulk without constantly exposing itself to the extreme physical risks of fighting heavily armed dirosaurids. But dominating an ecosystem requires a massive metabolic engine, and this is the most terrifying part of the Titanoboa equation. Snakes are obligate ectotherms. They are completely cold-blooded. Their internal body temperature, and therefore their maximum biological size, is entirely dictated by the ambient temperature of their environment. They cannot generate significant internal body heat. They rely completely on external heat to fuel their baseline metabolism, move their massive muscular bulk, and power the highly demanding chemical process of digesting hundreds of kilograms of raw meat. You cannot put a 50-foot snake in the modern Amazon rainforest, which averages roughly 80 degrees Fahrenheit. If Titanoboa lived there today, its massive core would never absorb enough external heat. Its digestive acids would completely fail to break down a 500-kilogram meal. The massive prey would literally rot inside the snake's stomach. The decomposing meat would produce massive amounts of toxic gases. The snake would physically inflate from the inside out until the pressure crushed its own lungs, or the bacterial load poisoned its bloodstream, causing a painful, toxic death. To power a 2,500 body and successfully digest 1,100 pounds of raw meat at once, Titanoboa required a global greenhouse. 60 million years ago, the Earth experienced a severe spike in atmospheric carbon dioxide. The Cerrejón rainforest was a hyper-tropical, unyielding sauna. Scientists confirmed this by analyzing the oxygen isotopes trapped inside the fossilized remains of turtle shells and snake vertebrae found directly in the rock layers. These chemical isotopes act like microscopic thermometers. They lock in the ambient temperature of the water at the exact moment the animal lived. The data revealed a terrifying baseline metric. The equatorial rainforests of Colombia operated at a staggering average temperature of 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Year-round, day and night, the humidity sat at practically 100%. This intense, relentless heat acted exactly like an open throttle on the snake's metabolism. It was the biological engine making a 500-kilogram meal physically possible. It allowed Titanoboa to grow to impossible proportions. But it also forced the snake into an endless, punishing cycle of extreme caloric demand. Titanoboa was ultimately trapped in a biological arms race with its own massive size. It had to constantly hunt massive prey just to keep its colossal organs functioning. If the global temperature dropped even a few degrees, the entire internal system would completely collapse. And eventually, it did. As the Paleocene epoch shifted toward the Eocene, the Earth's climate slowly began to cool. It was a gradual, invisible decrease of just a few degrees over millions of years. But for a highly specialized cold-blooded predator, perfectly calibrated to an exact thermal window, a permanent drop of even a few degrees spells absolute disaster. As the global temperatures fell, Titanoboa's metabolism crashed, generating the explosive speeds required to strike fast-moving giant fish became physically impossible. Digesting heavily armored crocodiles took significantly longer, dangerously increasing the fatal risk of putrefaction in the gut. At the same time, the giant turtles and large crocodilians also began to shrink in overall body size as the environment cooled down. The massive jackpot meals permanently disappeared. The changing ecosystem could no longer support a cold-blooded predator of this immense magnitude. To survive in a cooler world, a snake inherently needs less ambient heat to keep vital organs functioning. The giant turtles shrank, the massive dirosaurids vanished, and the giant lungfish populations shifted. The 50-foot Titanoboa was completely eradicated. The ultimate apex predator of the Paleocene was not wiped out by a meteor impact or a superior hunter. It was completely erased from the planet because the ambient air temperature dropped by just a few devastating degrees. The 2,500-pound king of the jungle simply starved to death. And hey, I'll catch you next time.